following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Yo, Philly, how you's doing? Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball, past, present, and personal. I'm Bill Kashadis, your host on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Each August, the best Little League baseball teams from around the world meet at South Williamsport, Pennsylvania, to compete in the Little League World Series. The annual tournament has been held for nearly three-quarters of a century, but for Philadelphians, one of the most memorable tournaments occurred in 2014 when the Taney Dragons represented the Mid-Atlantic region. Taney was the first team from Philadelphia to win the Pennsylvania Little League title and only the ninth team from the state to make the Little League World Series since 1957. The team was named after Taney Street, a small lane running north-south between 26th and 27th Streets, where its home field is located. Its star player that season was a pitcher-center fielder by the name of Monet Davis. This athletically gifted 5'4", 111-pound girl captured the attention of the international Little League community when she threw a complete game two-hit shutout against an all-boys team from Nashville, Tennessee. She also became the youngest athlete ever to grace the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine. But there were 11 other very talented and personable youngsters on that team: Scott Bandura, Kai Cummings, Carter Davis, Jolly Hendricks, Eric Lipson, Jack Rice, Joe Richardson, Ty Shanahan, Eli Simon, Zion Spearman, and Jared Sprague-Lott. To give us a better understanding of that remarkable 2014 season is my guest, Taney's head coach, Alex Rice, the father of Jack Rice. Welcome to the podcast, Alex. It's great to have you.
Hi, Bill. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
The Taney Little League program obviously is known in this area, but it was only 2 years old when the team advanced to the Little League World Series in 2014. How did that team originate, Alex?
Well, Taney, the baseball league, has been around, at that time had been around for 20 plus years. It had started in 1994, so it wasn't until 2013, almost 20 years later, that I convinced the league board to take out a charter for Little League. And at the time, people didn't even really understand what Little League was. They assumed you were playing on a small field and the kids were little. You were playing Little League, but they didn't understand that it was an incorporation in entire organizations, and you had to take out a charter and follow certain guidelines and rules. So in 2013, I wanted my son and his friends to have the opportunity to play in the World Series playoff. Obviously, it takes all summer to get to Williamsport, but I want them to play in districts against the other local Little League teams and have that experience. So in 2013, I convinced the board, and it barely passed, I will say, I think 6-5, to take out a charter.
Why such a close decision?
They were worried that it would change the nature of the league. Like I said, they'd been around for about 20 years. It's a really inclusive league. It encompasses Center City, Philadelphia, or downtown Philadelphia, and you get swaths of people from all over the city. From all the different neighborhoods, different zip codes, playing in the league. It's what's kind of termed a commuter league, in terms of we have lots of families, parents who live somewhere in the city and they drive or take public transportation into downtown, and their kids they'll drop their kids off downtown at school or what have you. And the board, without fully understanding how Little League worked, they were concerned that by joining, it would keep kids who are in the league from being able to join the league, which I laboriously had to go into the details of what Little League was to let them understand nothing would change, that the league would no one would change, no one would be denied access to the league, in that it would still be the very welcoming league that it was, and everyone from the city who wanted to play in the league could play.
Now, theoretically, I grew up in Northeast Philly. My father worked at Hahnemann Hospital and commuted in every single day. So theoretically, if I was around in 2014, I, living in Northeast Philadelphia, could try out for that Taney team and play on it then, if I was selected. Is that correct?
Well, it depends. We're in the Northeast. I mean, you could join the league. Anyone could join the league,
right?
And play the recreational season, the spring season. From April through June, and then at the end of the season, the kids in the league, as long as they lived within the boundary, the Little League boundary, which is a geographic imaginary line that encompasses, Center City, you would be allowed to try out for what they call the All-Star team, and those 12, however many kids, would represent Taney as my 12 kids did.
Mm-hmm. Now,
so yes,
since technically, I guess I could if the section of the Northeast I lived in was in that 40 zip code region that was applicable to your charter. And I guess, I realized that when you were playing in the early part of the summer of 2014 and winning, there were some rather jealous, envious coaches that started making the claim, well, Taney is an all-star squad. It's from all these different areas, much like, some of the accusations that we made over the years in Little League that, for example, Taiwan was creating a national all-star team. But again, your charter validated those 40 different zip codes, so you were completely within your rights to do that, correct?
Well, absolutely. I worked very closely with the Eastern Regional Office, Patrick Holden, who's the regional director, and Corey Wright up there. And I don't know how much detail you want to go into, but so when we first took it out in 2013, we had our boundaries were Center City, a little North Philadelphia, and kind of West Philadelphia. It was essentially where we grabbed most of the kids that played. But as we found out in 2013, for kids who didn't live within the boundary, you have to sign a regular season waiver.
Right.
And in 2013, after having families sign and notarize, we had probably, I'm trying to remember, over 200 families kind of have to sign waivers and get them notarized and everything. And the amount of paperwork was it just took hours and hours and hours. Weekends, I was just doing waivers for,
wow.
And so I called up Patrick at the end of the 2013. I said, Patrick, this is crazy. Do other leagues do this? I'm literally doing hundreds of waivers for the kids who are already in the league, who have been in the league. Their parents are confused. They don't understand why their kids have played in the league since T-ball for 5, 6, 7 years are suddenly having to sign waivers. No one understands it. It's a phenomenal amount of paperwork. Is there anything we can do to, not have to do the regular season waivers? And it was actually Patrick who came up with the idea, because he knew in Center City, Philadelphia, there's one other Little League. There's no Delaware Valley to the south was really the only Little League in Philadelphia at the time. And there was no other. I guess there had been some in the past. They were now defunct. But there's no other Little Leagues. And Patrick suggested, we'll try and encompass, where your current enrollment is and make that your boundary, try and eliminate as much of these waivers as possible. And since there were no other Little Leagues, we expanded the boundary with the understanding, and this is in writing in Bristol with Patrick and Corey, that if another Little League wanted to incorporate, we would turn over that territory and that let them incorporate. But keeping our 2013, the original boundary right in Center City in West Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So it was actually Patrick and Eastern Regional, and they signed off on it. They did all the census study and so forth and so on. And it was really an enormous help. The following season, 2014, I think we had to do maybe 30 or 50 waivers, and it was, just an enormous help. And honestly, the league, which has always been around 900 families, hasn't changed, one iota. The families that play in the league, they don't know or care really whether we're in Little League or not. They don't understand what it is. So the league hasn't changed. And a lot, I've heard what you're saying from the naysayers. We used to call them the haters. Well, you're drawing from all over the place. Well, we're not. They're the same kids from the same areas that have been in the league for 20 years. We didn't gain the team, that 2014 team from, when I was coaching these guys over the summer and so forth. We didn't gain any players. We didn't lose any players. It's the same team that, had been coming up through Taney as the all-star team since, they were 7-8 years old.
Right. And it's really a shame. I mean, and unfortunately, this is what happens when the real competitive parents get involved in Little League. It's really a shame because if people had done the research on the Taney team that went to Williamsport, most, if not all, those kids were together from the time they started playing baseball, and many of them played for the Anderson Monarchs. In the 1990s, I taught and coached at the William Penn Charter School, and in fact, I was a director of service learning. And one of our projects, I guess it was in 1993 or 94, was rehabbing an old community center / gymnasium in West Philly. Was it West Philly or Center City? It was in what was Anderson territory, and Steve Bandura was the operating manager there at that period of time, and he was talking to me about his plans of starting this Anderson Monarchs because he knew I was crazy about baseball. And said, look, we want to start this in 95 and maybe you want to get interested. And I said, you know what, if I didn't live in Chester County, I'd do it. And we had just started a family at that period of time. But, had it not been for that, if I was a little younger, I would have been full speed onto that Anderson Monarch team.
I did not know that. That's a great story.
No, and that's why I've always been very, very interested in what happened, to Steve's program, and clearly, I saw the fruition of it. So most of these kids did come out of that, I'm assuming, Anderson Monarchs program, correct?
No, very few of them did.
Oh, really? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. No, I know that's kind of how it's been portrayed. The three kids that came up through that that started there instead of starting at Taney was Monet, Jolly, and Scotty, Steve's son Scott. They started there when they were 4 years old, and as Steve was the director there. But the other 9 kids came up through Taney. Now but as the kids got older, like my son, as you know, the Anderson is in the middle of Taney, of Center City, and honestly, Anderson was the only, outside of the rec league, Anderson and Steve was really the only instruction, or I'll say coaching travel team in Center City. So a lot of the, he selected kids, and there was a lot of overlap. Like my son started going there and hitting with Steve when he was 6. And a lot of kids did. And then Steve, through his program, if he had some kids on his team, the Monarchs, who maybe weren't getting a lot of playing time on his travel team, he would tell them to go, why don't you play Taney so that, play both and you can get more games in and so forth. So there was a lot of overlap between the two. Mm-hmm.
So some of those kids did eventually, although they didn't begin with Anderson, there was the overlap there, or they either played against or eventually went on to Anderson. It sounds like what you're saying. Correct.
My son became a Monarch. Jared Sprague-Lott, Carter Davis, Zion Spearman, by the time they were probably 11, they were playing both. And it was a lot, but you're talking about this group, the 12 kids, one of the reasons they got as far as they did was because they absolutely loved playing baseball, and they couldn't get enough baseball. So I think from either around 10 or 11, except for Carter, those 7 kids were playing on both teams, both Taney and Anderson.
One of the things that really impressed me after I started doing a lot of research on Taney and the Anderson Monarchs was that the parents who played leadership roles, meaning coaching, head coaching, managing, on either of those teams, were not baseball players. I mean, Bandura was a boxer. I think that's one of the reasons he wanted me to get involved, because he's self-taught as far as baseball is concerned. And you yourself, I remember talking with you before, you did not play the game very long, did you? I mean, you're badminton? Was that your sport?
Oh, where you get your info? No, I did. I played baseball through high school, but I high school came along, college, and I knew it was time to focus on academics full time. But no, it's plenty of coaches, and Steve too. I mean, Steve's self-taught as I was, and he coaches basketball there, soccer, and he's a very good coach in all of those. And he really developed all the travel programs, the soccer, the basketball, the baseball, all self-taught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what impressed me, because you see the leagues out here in Chester County now, and even where I coach, which is out in Columbia County. I coach at Millville High School in Columbia County, Pennsylvania. So much of it is parents generated. It's not really following what the kids' natural interests are. It's some of the parents, some of the dads, in particularly living vicariously through the kid. I mean, we saw that, here in Chester County in the little leagues that my sons grew up playing in, and to me it got so distasteful, because it moved away from what the mission of Little League baseball was, which was developing the life lessons in kids. And as Stephen Keener has often said, one of the most valuable lessons a young child can learn is how to lose. And how to roll with that and come back and pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on. And I saw that. I mean, I saw a lot of that, in the Little League World Series with the teams that did advance to Williamsport. Very interested in the Negro League history program. Was Jack a part of that? Your son, that the Anderson Monarchs did with their bus tour.
Oh, absolutely.
I know, that he's done several times. Can you tell us a little bit about that? About that program?
Well, I think specifically you're referring to the Barnstorming tours.
Right.
I mean, Steve has run. I know there's several years where we did Friday night movie night. Where all the kids would come over and instead of going out with friends and so forth. I mean, granted, they're a little younger, but we'd come over Friday night and we'd watch civil rights movies, or movies about African American icons and so forth and so on. So, I mean, that's a huge part of what Steve's doing is trying to get these kids to connect with the past and get an understanding of where they are, how they got there, and, you know, the never forget type educational component of, because a lot of the kids who come through Anderson are African American kids from underserved neighborhoods. And one of the things Steve put together, I forget when the first bus tour is, probably maybe 15 or so years ago. Steve got this old 1957 bus, and like the Negro Leagues used to do, they would go barnstorming, where the team would jump on a bus and go from city to city and just play games. And Steve came up with this idea to barnstorm with the kids. And the first tour, which we weren't a part of, this is long before we got there, and took one of the teams, and they would drive all over the Midwest, hitting, you know, kind of iconic places with the kids for educational reasons, but at the same time, stopping and playing games against local teams. And, you know, in the Midwest, and seeing teams that were probably all white, and here's his team, who was all African American. And it was just a wonderful experience, and the kids would get to go to the Negro League, you know, Hall of Fame, museums, and everything. The last incarnation of it he did was 2015, which was essentially, you know, our group, most of the Taney kids, and other kids in his program on that team. And it was a civil rights barnstorming tour where we went in D.C., started off, toured the White House, got to meet with John Lewis, which was arguably the highlight of the entire trip, just, you know, to see an icon like John, have him take the afternoon to speak to the kids. And then went on down through the Deep South, hitting, you know, every possible, you know, iconic location of the civil rights movement. You know, going to Montgomery, you know, standing in Martin Luther King's living room, where he and Coretta probably were up late at nights talking and figuring out, you know, their next move. Just down the street, First Baptist Church, to go there and see where he gave his sermons. You know, we ended up obviously going to the 16th Street Baptist Church, going to Selma and Edmund Pettus Bridge. And, you know, as an architect, and I know this sounds like it is a cliche, but you really can't fully appreciate or understand or connect with locations or places until you actually go and stand there and can picture, you know, flashback, whatever, 40 years of what may have occurred there. You know, and as our architect, it's the truth. I could look at 100 pictures of the building in a book online, and you get there, you stand in the building, at the site, and so forth, and it's just a completely different experience.
You know, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're bringing back so many memories for me, because I believe that first trip was 2004, and I'll tell you why. I was writing a book about Dick Allen and the integration of Philadelphia baseball and the horrific treatment that Jackie Robinson had received when he was here. And at that time, being in the Quaker schools, I was trying to work out an association with the Jackie Robinson Foundation with Rachel Robinson, Jackie's widow, and the Anderson Monarch barnstorming tour was, I guess, in the infancy, and there were articles about it. And I did mention to Rachel that this was happening in Philadelphia and that it would be really neat if there could be some association there. And, you know, she said she was really interested in it, and if she herself wouldn't get in touch Sharon Robinson, her daughter,
Mm-hmm.
would get in
Mm-hmm.
touch with Steve. And I know she did because Sharon was part of, I think, subsequent barnstorming tours. So all this is bringing back really wonderful memories for me. And I remember how impressed I was because it was a way of combining my two loves, history and baseball, and particularly the Negro Leagues. And, to be able to wed those two interests like that with such young kids, and then to hear what the kids got out of it, after, I'd either see it on the news telecasts or the newspapers, was just really refreshing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to hear that, 2015 was the last one. I certainly hope that Steve resurrects these things.
I think he intends to. They're very expensive. We had some terrific sponsors who helped make it happen, and plus, just the amount of planning was a full year trying to schedule it and so forth and so on. But it was really a once in a lifetime thing. You can see the kids when they're at different places how emotionally impacted. There's kids who were brought to tears, some shaken, just going to these different, and they could literally feel the power and the past going to these places, and it's that kind of connection which is we lack today in this kind of high tech social media world. We're missing that connection to the past and different physical places. It was really a great experience.
Absolutely. Let's go to that 2014 magical season. Looking back at that season and the beginning of that season, how was the team playing? Could you have predicted in your wildest dreams that season would have ended in Williamsport when that season began?
No, I would not have put money on it. I won't kid you. I knew the team was very, very talented and was poised to be successful that summer. But honestly, I had no idea because we played as 11s. Little League has playoffs for every age group starting at 10. They have 10 playoff, 11, 12. And as 11s, we played the year before. And, we're a good team, but we didn't even get out of districts. There's some very, very good teams in eastern Pennsylvania and Delaware County in our district, District 19. But we all had a sense that, this team was special, and we worked incredibly hard that year between 2013 and 2014. Off season, as soon as we got back from summer vacation, right after Labor Day, started practicing 2-3 times a week. Fall ball. That spring, before leading up to the summer of 2014, the kids were playing 2 Taney games a weekend and 4 Monarch games, doubleheaders on Saturday, doubleheader on Sunday, and then 2 additional Taney games. So every weekend the kids were playing 6 games. There is that cliche of driving, changing uniforms in the car, eating granola bars in between games. And we knew from that fall of 2013 and the spring of 2014, when we were competing in Tri-State Elite, the league that encompasses Eastern PA, Southern Jersey, and Northern Delaware, playing against majors teams and beating them. We knew we were good. So, but a lot has to go right. By the time we got to Williamsport, I forget our record, but I think we were like 20-2 or something to that effect. So even if you're good, you don't have a lot of opportunity to lose. So a lot has to go right to get there.
Mm-hmm. At what point did you know? At what point did you know that you were going to, you could make it to Williamsport? At what point in the postseason?
At no point are you sure, because every step of the way you're unsure how good you are, versus the competition. I mean, I guess at some point in the regional up in Bristol, as you may know, but not everyone might know, there's 5 tournaments. There's districts, then there's sectionals, then there's the state playoffs, then there's regionals up in Bristol, and if you win regionals, you get to go to Williamsport. And I mean, every step of the way, we honestly barely made it out of districts. We had 2 one-run games. The final of districts, we won 2-1. Sectionals was a little easier. The state final, there's a team out of Pittsburgh who has if they had beaten us in states, they would have gone to Williamsport. They have the number 1 prospect in the nation, and this kid named Austin Hendricks, and we went 3 games with them and came back in the final game. I think we won 6-4 to win the state championship. And then when we got to regionals in Bristol, still loaded, really strong teams there. Probably the best team we faced in the tournament was that team out of Pittsburgh. But I mean, nothing was a sure thing at any point. We never, we weren't beating teams, 10, 15, 20 to nothing. We grounded out the whole way.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were blessed with two pretty impressive assistant coaches. One was Jerry Spray Lott's father, Leland Lott, and then a young man by the name of Reggie Cummings.
Kai's dad.
I'm sorry?
That was Kai Cummings' dad.
Kai Cummings' dad, right. Tell us a little bit about their roles. I mean, in going as far as you did, you really have to depend on your coach, on your assistant coaches. You just can't do something like this by yourself.
No. Absolutely. I mean, they were huge in all the preparations leading up to 2014 over the years, all the practices, helping me get those organized, the equipment, running the practices, and so forth. During the run itself, I think the biggest plus was just, it's very stressful to go through the attention and the travel and being away from home. They were unbelievably terrific in just emotional support for all the kids, myself. It gets a little lonely out there, and Leland in particular was just, and Reggie were there. They connected so well with the kids. The kids loved them and respected them, and by the time you at Williamsport, the kids have been on the road away from their parents for probably 3 or 4 weeks under pretty stressful circumstances, and yeah, they were huge, and I think that was their most important role, and not to diminish what they contributed, in baseball wise, but Reggie was great throwing batting practice and so forth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Let's go to Williamsport. August 15th, Taney plays its first game in the double elimination stage of the tournament, which was Game 6, and defeats Nashville 4-0 behind Monet Davis's pitching and the hitting of Jared Sprague Lott, who homered and knocked in 3 runs. What do you recall about that first game?
Oh, God. That was an afternoon game. That was our first game. Home run by Jared. That was huge. I think that was, honestly, a lot of it was a blur. That was our first game. but the kids were super excited to play. Probably the home run by Jared, 3-run shot. And then I was third base coach, so as Jared circled, I remember him, jumping on home plate. And best memory was kind of looking over to the parent section and seeing his mom, up in the stands after he just hit the 3-run home run. And Jared's a special kid to me, because he was my son Jack's best friend growing up. They were born at the same hospital on the same week. They went to the same, child care. And Jared had been on my team.
Masterman together? Yep. Went to
Masterman. Yep. And, Leland was, even on the rec league, he and I coached together. So Jared was always on my team. And to have him, and, obviously we're from all that. We're very close to his mom and dad. And to be able to watch her, up in the stands, watch her son in front of probably 35, 40,000, mostly Philadelphia fans cheering her son as he just hit a home run. It's a pretty good feeling.
Well, I was there at that game, and what really impressed me was Monet Davis's pitching. I mean, only one of two girls who competed in the Little League World Series that year. The poise of a pro, and playing with, yes, friends, good friends, I'm sure, but it's different. The only girl on the team. And then when she started getting national recognition, how did she handle it? How did her teammates handle it?
She handled it fine. Monet is unique. I have absolutely no idea how 12, 13-year-old kid can be that poised. I remember she was pitching the final game of regionals against Delaware in order to punch her ticket to go to Williamsport, and we were going to have to leave. We were going to go take batting practice and get ready for the game. It was going to be a night game on ESPN and so forth and so on. The winner gets to go to Williamsport. And what is she doing? She's sound asleep in her bunk, getting some extra rest. I mean, it just, she's just a different makeup, different fabric makes her up. Just unbelievably. She relaxed me at these games. I mean, the coaches, the adults are supposed to be the calm ones, keep everyone focused and everything. And, that was the case on the outside. But she actually, when she showed up, calmed me down just because she was so cool and not nervous. She just did not get nervous. Actually, there was a lot of kids on this team who would go into these situations and not be nervous, which is, I just to this day just can't understand how you can walk into some of these situations and not, completely unflappable. Joe Richardson was the same way.
Perhaps because they're so young and naive at that point, because they don't know what the big deal is about. They've always been, doing this kind of thing, and they're in their element with their own friends. A friend of mine by the name of Al Teelmans, who is a Sports Illustrated photographer and took the photograph of Monet on that August 25th, 2014 Sports Illustrated cover.
If I may take a quick step back, Al drove with us on the entire barnstorming tour in 2015. Yeah. And if you want any accounting of the tour, Al wrote a blog, and it is absolutely phenomenal.
Right. I know that. Yeah, I know that. And one of the things that impressed him was just that the thing that you pointed out, spot on, the calming influence of not just Monet, but all the kids. All the kids. I mean, true pros, young pros, but, that at the baseball adage, never too high, never too low. And that undoubtedly was part of that team's success. And for such a young age, that is remarkable, just remarkable. Let's go to August 14th, though. Taney edged out.
When you threw out some of these questions, one interesting little tidbit, which I've never told anyone about the Tennessee game and the game that got Monet on the cover of Sports Illustrated, was the last batter that she struck out there in the sixth inning to complete game shutout. She was at her pitch count, not the final pitch count, but one prior for days rest. If she had not striking that batter out, if the batter had walked or gotten hit or whatever, I was taking her out for the next batter. And I don't know if that would have changed the whole Monet story, if that would have kept her off of the cover of Sports Illustrated. Wow. But we went in with a game plan, and we knew at what pitch count she was coming out. And I was on the step to go get her when she came back. I think it was like a 3-0 count on the kid, and she came back to strike him out. But I don't think anyone knows that she was going to pitch, 5 2/3 of a game. How close she came to not, finishing that game. Because at the time, it's not in my mind. Oh my God, she's going to get on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I'm thinking, I need her to pitch on Monday. Should we lose on Sunday? That's the only thing in my mind is the
Al would have killed you. It's as simple as that.
In retrospect, I'm like, oh my God, how close was I to just messing up everything for Al, Sports Illustrated?
Wow. No, and I get it. I mean, I completely understand that. I've never been in that high a level situation with trying to think ahead in terms of games, but I've been there at a much lower level of Little League competition, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Taney edged out Texas, a power hitting squad, 7-6. Texas hit 2 home runs in the game, but Sprague Watt and Eric Libson pitched and prevailed to advance to the next round. Zion Spearman had 2 hits, 2 RBIs in that game for Taney as well. What stood out about that Texas game? It was a nail-biter.
Oh, yeah. That was a great game. I think Joe pitched in that game, too. That was just a neat game. That was a night game. And, the stadium, that was a Sunday night game. The stadium was still packed with people who had taken buses from Philadelphia. And there's always just kind of a special feeling to those night games. And Zion, just that last inning to come back. And that was the thing with this team. There was, I know Monet got a lot of attention, but that was just a clutch team. The entire lineup, I don't think people realized there weren't any, the 10, 11, 12 hitters or automatic outs. The team was very talented top to bottom, and we got big hits. If we went through the entire summer of the tournament, we got big time hits from everywhere in the order. Carter Davis, who I think hit towards the bottom of the order. He had a home run in districts, which kept us from losing in districts. He had a home run in the state tournament in that final game to come back against the Pittsburgh team. Anyways, and it was just, that was the neatest part about that game and that team, was just how much the kids kind of grinded it out. And then, of course, Zion coming up with that huge hit to tie it. And, the feeling to walk off bottom of the 6th in front of a crowd of 30, 40,000 fans. Pretty good feeling.
Hey, let me tell you, if you remember that year, the Phillies weren't doing much. and all Philadelphia baseball, the whole Philadelphia baseball world centered its attention on Williamsport for those glorious couple weeks, because we had another Philadelphia team to root for. On August 20th, Monet returns to the mound to face Nevada, and this was just a juggernaut team. I mean, Nevada had defeated South Dakota 12-2. It defeated Illinois 13-2 by 10 or more runs. Monet only pitched 2.5 innings, but she recorded 6 strikeouts. Interesting. Why did you take her out in the third when Taney was only down by 3 runs?
Actually, I think it was 3-1. We were down 3-1. We took it. It was 3-1 going into the 6th inning. That's how close the game was. Again, as I talked about in the game against Tennessee, before every game, we had our pitching strategy set. And even before the game, I would sit down with Leland and Reggie and say, this situation, this scenario, this is what we're doing, and make sure we all said, we agree, this is what we're doing, correct? Because you don't want to get into the middle of the game with ESPN and 40,000 fans and have to start talking about what you want to do. So we had a very clear-cut plan for every game. Monet, we knew that if we beat Las Vegas on Wednesday, we would be playing Las Vegas on Saturday. We knew if we lost to Las Vegas on Wednesday, if we could beat whomever, Chicago it ended up being, on Thursday, we would be playing Las Vegas on Saturday. So in our mind, we wanted Monet on the mound on Saturday. So when she got to her pitch count for days off, the game, we were going to pull her regardless of what the score was. And we had enough pitching. I mean, honestly, the team was, I don't think there's that many Little League teams with as much pitching as we had. And if the games had been stacked more tightly, Little League spaces the game out. You play every 2 or 3 days. Your number 1 pitcher pitches, and then the next game, your number 2 pitcher pitches, and by the time you get to the third game, your number 1's back. If the schedule had been condensed, like if you're doing a typical baseball tournament over the weekend, nobody, and I believe this 100%, I know it. I mean, we were 7 deep. Nobody could have touched us if the schedule had been condensed. We legitimately had 7 kids who would have been, 1-2s on any of the other teams. And so I had complete faith in the rest of the pitching crew for the rest of that game. And then I particularly knew that we had more than enough to pitch on Thursday if we didn't win. And the thing we got to see was Monet could absolutely dominate that lineup. She had 6 strikeouts, most of which was at the top of their order, if I remember correctly. I mean, the one shot that really hurt was there was a miscue, and I forget the kid is the 8-hole hitter hit the home run, the 2-run home run, which put him up 3-1. And that was actually a miscommunication. The funny thing about Monet was she went through that whole season. She had failing eyesight, which I didn't find out until the following fall after we got back, when she got glasses. But she had trouble at times reading the signals that Scott was giving to her. So the ball that the 8-hole hitter kid, it was supposed to be a breaking ball, one of her, big looping 12-6 curve balls, and she threw a fastball, and the kid, timed it just right. But we knew she could dominate that lineup, so we wanted her on Saturday, and we were in it to win. We weren't there just to get to the next game. Everyone wanted to win the U.S. championship.
The game, the next game, which was, as it turned out, your final game, was against Jackie Robinson West Little League of Chicago, Illinois, which represented the Great Lakes region. Sprague-Lott and Lipson pitched for Taney against Chicago, which scored all 6 of its runs in the first 2 innings. After the first 2 innings, the score was 6-2 in Chicago's favor. Taney fought back, scoring 2 in the 4th and 1 in the 5th to cut the advantage just 1 run. Spearman, who had 2 hits, 2 walks, and 2 RBIs, played a critical role in Taney's offense, but unfortunately, Taney lost the game 6-5 and was eliminated. What do you remember?
Oh, I don't know. That game was just enormously disappointing in that I know we should have won that game. Obviously, we spotted them the 4 runs on the 2 errors, which was just, maybe it was just our game for it to happen. But, and one of the reasons we had gotten to Williamsport was our defense. And I would argue when we were the best defensive team there. I'd say argue we were one of the best defensive teams that's ever been there. We got through the summer and we got to Williamsport averaging less than half an error per game through the course of the summer.
Wow.
And the fact that we had 2 bad errors against a hyper-aggressive running team, it just couldn't have worked out any worse for us. So we spotted them the 4 runs, and what was really disappointing was the game plan we had for Chicago just worked perfectly. They had this flame-throwing kid. If you were at that game, you remember Marquise Jackson. He could throw, easy, mid, maybe high 70s, and we knew it too. He was the only pitcher that they had left because they had been down in after they got mercied by the West, by Nevada. They had to fight their way out of the entire losers bracket to get there. And we knew they had no pitching left. And we also knew Marquise, as hard as he threw, was also wild. So we had the strategy of, first taking a first pitch, taking the first strike, which means the kids would take until they had a called strike 1. And we got Marquise out after 3 innings. And we knew they had no one left. We knew probably the kid they'd bring in, I think his name was Buford. And Buford had given up. He had just gotten wrecked by Nevada. He'd given up 8 or 9 runs against Nevada. So we knew if we got Marquise out, we had a real good shot of scoring, a lot of late runs. And we ended up getting 3 runs off Marquise anyways. So the game plan kind of worked perfect. It's just we spotted him too many runs, and we just couldn't come back. They were all unearned, those runs. So
now, after that game, Chicago went on to defeat Nevada 7-5 in the U.S. Championship, but they lost to South Korea 8-4 in the World Championship. Here's the kicker, as you know. On February 11th, 2015, Jackie Robinson West's wins were vacated after it was found that the team used ineligible players from outside the Chicago area, and Nevada was named the U.S. champion. Now, because all of Jackie Robinson West had to forfeit all of its games in the tournament, Taney's official record at Williamsport was 3-1 instead of 2-2. Do you think that Taney would have prevailed against Nevada again in the U.S. Championship if had the opportunity to play them again?
Of course I do. Because I had Monet Davis coming back to the mound.
Yep.
And let me tell you how that entire season, the run worked out. Every step of the way, the tournament, Monet started the first game for us, was lackluster at best, and she pitched the final closing game at districts, sectionals. Well, she came in relief at sectionals, state tournament, regionals. Every time there, her first performance was mediocre at best, and she was just shut down for the championship, the final. There is absolutely no question in my mind if we had another shot. I mean, it was 3-1 going into the 6th against Nevada, and we had our chances. I think we left 9 runners on base against Nevada, and I remember the first inning we had 2 on. My son Jack hit a line drive to the warning track. I don't know if you remember this. What was the kid's name? Barker, little right fielder, dove at the warning track. It ended up being like the number one play on ESPN that night to save 2 runs there. I remember the next inning, it was a third or fourth inning, the bases loaded, no outs, line drive right to second baseman, double play. I mean, we had our chances, and and that was against their best pitcher, and there's no question in my mind we would have, all due respect, I think we would have won.
Alex, what's your fondest memory from that entire experience? You've mentioned a lot of them already, and it's probably an unfair question to ask to put one above any of the others, but if you had to identify one, what would the fondest memory be?
I think, having all the families there together, being together for the whole summer. If you're asking me, I think for me, to make it to Williamsport, like my family all came to Williamsport to watch. My sister from San Diego flew out. My brother from North Carolina flew out, and my parents came. My dad, mid 80s, he ended up passing away the following year. So just the fact that, before he passed away, he got to see his son and grandson at Williamsport. That's probably, for me, the most rewarding part of it. There's so much rewarding, but if you're asking me specifically, personally for me, that was the best part, was that, my brother's sister and my dad made it there. I know just being with the families, how special it was for, all 12 families being together that summer. And, of course, we had no idea coming back to Philadelphia after Williamsport. We had no idea just how much the city was following us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you're in Williamsport, you're in these the dormitories, the bunkers, and everything, and you're somewhat sequestered. I'm not really on social media, but we genuinely had no idea just how much the city was following us. Apparently, the mayor was having these watch parties. And,
that's right.
Comcast was doing pre-games of our games and everything. It was just, billboards. Just that was when we got back and we found out all that. That was a good feeling, just because not that the team did well, but just that the city got so excited.
Oh, it was also so much of the fact that the composition of that team, in terms of its social diversity, really represented the city, and that meant a lot. I think that meant a lot to everybody in the city.
I agree, and that's why was so special, I thought, about the team, and it kind of goes back to the league Taney itself. We're talking about the 37 zip codes. I wouldn't want Taney to change a thing. The best part about the league is that, kids from all over the city play in that league. It's kids that go to elite private schools playing with kids from really rough neighborhoods and everything in between. That was really the best part about that team.
What are those players doing today? I mean, it's Sports Illustrated informed us recently that Monet has decided to go to Howard University and, I guess, pursue studies in communications journalism. What about your son? What's Jack going to be doing?
Well, half of the team graduated this year, and the other half are rising seniors.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That would be true. Yeah.
So 6 kids are heading off to college, and the other 6 still have 1 more year to go. And my son's on the younger side, so he still has his senior year to go. But the 6 who are heading off, Monet, Joe Richardson, Carter Davis, Jolly Hendricks, Zion, and Eli Simon those are the 6 that graduated this year.
Yeah, Millville, my baseball team, shot herself in the foot in the district final against Montgomery, who we had beaten twice during the regular season. But we were headed and preparing for Gamp and to see Eric Lipson on the mound, who I guess is now a rising senior. Montgomery defeated Gamp up in Columbia County, but I would have loved to have played against Gamp. It seemed like a really talented team, and it was nice to be able to see one of those kids again.
Yeah.
And probably would have even faced them. So
yeah, Eric's fun to watch.
Yeah, and he was somewhat of a rock star himself after a while on that team. The press got to know him as Lippy, I guess, and he was all over the place. So
yeah, he enjoyed it.
Great group of kids. Alex, thanks for being with us and for your contributions to a baseball program that cultivated honorable values of the game, and that's what Little League is supposed to be about. So thank you.
No, thank you. My pleasure. It was fun talking to you.
And thank you, Philly fans, for tuning in. See you next week for another podcast of Philadelphia baseball, past, present, and personal. This is Bill Cachetis, rounding third and heading home on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.